hold hands and close your eyes. It's midnight, and you're listening to the Ghost Story Guys. Welcome to the Ghost Story Guys. I'm Brennan Storr.
I'm Paul Bestall.
And this is the show where we talk about spooks, specters, and all the other things watching us from the shadows beyond the campfire. Some conversations only make sense after the sun has set, and this is most definitely one. Thanks for tuning in. This is episode number 183, and we're coming to you from that tiny mountain cabin you dream about, but can never quite reach. Paul, my friend, you're upright again. I'm very happy to see this.
I am risen like Lazarus.
Man, well, at least Lazarus was lucky enough to be dead for a while. You just felt like hot trash for like 2 weeks.
Yeah. It's the first time I've had to cancel a couple of interviews because I just simply, my brain was mush.
Brutal.
I couldn't function to the levels I set myself.
You have high standards, that's one thing, but you just, it's not common for you to get that sick. You were rough. I was checking on you because usually I'm like, oh, Paul is eternal. He was here before we were born and we'll be here after we die. But this time I thought I should send him a message, just make sure he's still alive.
Yeah, I don't know what I've had. I thought I'd got a really bad cold, but the last week or so I've just been completely exhausted. I've been as weak as a kitten.
God damn. Well, I'm glad you're on the mend. Always good to have you back. And I'm looking forward to this episode because we are taking a quick digression from the theme of the last couple episodes, which was, of course, sharing the stories of author Ruth Roper Wilde. But on this episode, I wanted to take, like I said, a quick little break from that, because I was reminded of a series of stories that I had squirreled away a while back. And I was going through our Google Docs and I found the script and I thought, I kind of want to revisit these. Or I guess visit them for the first time. But those are stories of black mists. And we've had some experience with this already. We've covered some stories of like sort of oily black orbs. There was one I remember from the Chicago show, and I feel like there was another one, maybe from the Iowa show, that was like a black pool. Not the fun one with ballroom dancing. Years ago, I had to go see a neurologist, and he was an elderly man, probably in his early 80s. I had to get a CT scan done, and he said, have you ever been to Blackpool? And I said, no. He goes, oh, I love the ballroom dancing. My wife and I used to compete every year. And the next time I went to go see him, which was maybe a week later to get my results, he said, have you ever been to Blackpool? I said, no. He said, oh, I love it. My wife and I used to go ballroom dancing there every year. And I thought, which of us should be getting the fucking CT scan, man? But yes, I thought this would be a really cool time to dive into some stories of black mist. So I'm really looking forward to sharing those with everybody. But before we do, there was something that came up recently, and I wanted to tell you about this, Paul. I haven't had a chance to tell you yet. I had a call from a friend of mine who works in the healthcare field.
Mm-hmm.
And periodically they'll share the odd thing with me. Always respecting patient confidentiality, of course. But this one was really, really interesting. They said they'd had a patient who had been in long-term care for quite some time. Well, my friend was at lunch one day recently, and all of a sudden could smell this patient. They had not seen them that day, as I understand it, but they were just sitting there down in the hospital cafeteria, and all of a sudden they smelled this person around them. And they thought, well, that was weird. And this person said, in that moment, they thought, oh, they're gone. But they were sitting with people and they didn't want to say anything because that's the kind of shit that gets you weird looks. So they didn't bring anything up. But when they went back to work, they found out that this patient had in fact passed while they were downstairs.
You come across like quite a lot with people that work in healthcare, especially with people that have to do with end-of-life scenarios. I think they sometimes build a connection with people that they seem aware of their health when they're not even dealing with them. Especially when it's things like aromas, because the one thing about aromas is that certain people are quite distinct by the perfume or the cologne they choose to wear. Not everybody wears the same. It seems to be, even though when things are quite popular, I would imagine if you've got a group of friends and you all wear perfume or aftershave, I would be very surprised if more than 2 of you use the same brand.
Yeah, or the same blend of things. You know, I wear 2 different colognes blended together. A very specific scent.
Yes, I wear sage and blood.
Okay, well, that's some party.
Nice cocktail, too.
Again, if there's anyone I believe drinking that.
Yes, I'm trying to build myself up to drinking the Clamato that my brother bought me for Christmas.
Oh, did he really?
Yes. I've not been drunk enough yet to test it.
Well, this might be the thing that stops you from being sick. This could be your body crying out to be completed by the bottle of Clamato just out of reach.
Indeed. I've been that ill, I bought some grapefruit juice.
Anything but Clamato.
I like grapefruit juice.
Oh, okay. I like grapefruit juice and tequila.
I don't like tequila in my grapefruit juice.
This is how the fight began. All right, well, before we start slugging it out over whether the tequila has ruined the grapefruit juice or the other way around, we're going to thank our patrons.
This one's for the patrons.
Patrons, we could not do what we do without you. And so thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Really, folks, we could not make this show without our patrons and Apple Podcast subscribers. You guys are the ones who make this show go, and we deeply, deeply appreciate every single one of you. And well, of course, we'd like to thank patrons and Apple Podcast subscribers. We would especially like to thank our latest ones.
Laurie H.
Dawn Marie.
Floey Two Hats.
Folks, thank you again. This does not happen without your support, so we appreciate every single one of you. And if you want to join the team, you'll get ad-free episodes, all kinds of other cool stuff, which we'll tell you about at the end of the show. You can get that at patreon.com/ghoststoryguys. That's patreon.com/ghoststoryguys, or by signing up to GSG Premium via Apple Podcasts. And don't forget, if you are a GSG Premium member, and there are quite a few of you now, don't forget to send us your confirmation. Just screenshot it and forward it to us at ghoststoryguys@gmail.com. And we will make sure to thank you in this part of the show, because we very much value your contributions too, and we want to make sure you're properly thanked. As always, big thanks to our composer, Rainy Days for Ghosts. Rainy Days for Ghosts is a project of film journalist and musician Harper Smith. You can find more of Harper's work by heading to rainydaysforghosts.bandcamp.com, or by searching for Rainy Days for Ghosts or Street Witch on streaming platforms everywhere. And of course, all of Harper's music is bespoke for this show, and if you like what you hear, we do release soundtrack albums. So Season 6, which was the first season we started working with Harper, is out on streaming platforms now, and by the time this is released for the public, Volume 2, which covers Season 7, which is 2023, that will be also out on streaming platforms everywhere. So you can stream it for free. I mean, you can buy it, but I don't know why you would. Just stream the damn thing. We don't put it out there for you to buy it. That's not necessary. Just stream it, live it, love it, and Ghost Story Guys Season 7 on music platforms everywhere. All right, we're going to take a quick break for some of that music I've been talking about, and then we'll be back with Stories of the Black Mist.
About 4 years ago, I took my dog Beak for a short hike along the Juan de Fuca Strait in Washington State. The trail from the parking lot to the beach led through tall cedar trees, passing through a large clearing before ultimately arriving at the sea. Beak and I played for the beach for an hour or so before I started to get worn out, and we decided we should head back. On the return journey, we stopped and took a break at a picnic table in the middle of the clearing. Beak, being the monkey she is, was standing on top of the picnic table looking around when she fixated on a spot across the field, and I watched as her hackles went up. She started to growl. Always one to trust my pup, I focused in and saw, to our right, what appeared to be a black mist starting to form in mid-air. I watched as it took on a long form, roughly the size of a human, before gliding across the trail and dissolving. The whole time it was visible, it was as if we were looking at a translucent black cloud, except that it moved with purpose. I got out of there as fast as I could, and I tried not to think about it for a while. Then, a few weeks later, I overheard my co-worker Larry say something about a black cloud during a conversation at lunch. Once we were back on the floor, I took him aside to ask him what he'd been talking about. Larry said that a couple of nights before, his wife had been out on the front porch smoking. She usually smokes out back, he said, but I guess there were some squirrels out there eating from the cat's bowl and she didn't want to scare them. She loves animals, as you can probably gather. As she was smoking, she noticed a small black cloud drifting in front of the neighbour's house across the street. At first she didn't think too much of it, but after a moment it started to shift, just like the one I saw. It went from shapeless cloud to full-grown translucent person walking up the driveway, and all of this happened in a brightly lit area. Larry said the figure kept walking all the way up to the garage door, at which point it passed right through. He said he thought it wasn't very believable, but I knew better and told him so. I thought that it might give him some relief, but if anything, I think having it confirmed bothered him more.
Yeah, that's probably where I would come in on this, is I could have done without knowing that.
A classic paranormal experience, I think, that kind of thing. I've been reading a lot of Peter Underwood's books this week, which features a lot of shapeless clouds forming in stately homes around the United Kingdom.
Oh,
so
really?
It's nice to hear them, yes.
Interesting. So, okay, so I did not realize this was an established thing. I guess they're not always black mists. They sort of come in a variety of hues.
Yeah, grey and white.
Right.
A few green ones here and there.
Interesting.
But you do get black ones too. So yeah, they are a myriad of colours.
Fascinating. I had my own experience with a black mist, but it didn't, and that's actually what inspired me to start looking for these kind of stories and collect them over the last little while. And I've talked about it in the show, so I'm not going to dwell on it, but it didn't form a person. Actually, I've had a couple encounters with shit like this. I'll save one for later. But I'm driving with a good friend of mine, and it was late. It was about 11:30 midnight, and we were driving in Victoria on Bay Street, which going towards Royal Jubilee Hospital. And we noticed up ahead that it looked darker than it should be underneath this tree. The tree kind of was hanging over the road. And that particular stretch was much darker than it reasonably should have been. And we kind of thought, well, that's odd. But we were just, you're driving, right? You don't think too much of it. And when we passed through that cloud, man, the temperature dropped a few degrees. And it was only for a couple seconds, but it was noticeable. And I remember having never up to that point experienced anything quite like that. It was really bizarre.
There is a connotation, I think, even in the modern era, that if you see a black mist, it seems to give a negative connotation. It's almost as if you can feel its malevolence on it for some reason. I'm not sure if these sort of old biases are still, because I'm still astounded that pet shelters struggle to get cats and dogs that are darker adopted, because there's this old adage that it's not Salem. What the hell is going on with people?
That shocks me too. In fact, I just made a new black lab friend named Nimbus, and he's just a puppy. I think he's maybe 5 months old now.
Oh,
yeah. My neighbor, better not say his name, but one of my neighbors who lives not in the same building, but in the same sort of series of buildings. I ran into him one day, and he had this little, at that point, I think he was only 4 months old, this little puppy, and he's just the sweetest thing. And I guess someone had abandoned him in a house. And this guy my neighbor ended up looking after him, just fostering him until they found someone to look after him. But there's someone to take him full time. But the couple fosters that he had lined up, or the couple adopters he had lined up, didn't work out. So now he's just, I think, raising him. And so I get to hang out with him whenever they're outside doing their thing. And he's just the sweetest. Just the sweetest. He'll run right up to you and just, my neighbors sort of trained him not to jump up on you quite so much, but I'll just get down and play with him, because he's just, the energy is just adorable. It's just the sweetest little guy. And he'll like chew on my hands and stuff, and I don't give a shit. You just go for it, man. He's just the nicest dog. I'm actually trying to talk the neighbor to let me take him for walks. So I don't get that. I just don't. People are fucking stupid.
Yeah. Well, we've always had Labradors. My auntie used to breed black Labradors. So I've always had especially Labradors. They're the biggest silly balls of cuddly fun you could ever have. I mean, they eat everything, but they're still lovely.
I was going to say, apparently, when Nimbus gets excited, his thing is to either lick the ground or just start chewing on stuff. And so when he sees me, he'll run over to me, and I'll pet him and stuff. But then he immediately starts licking the ground. And or again, he'll pick something up, and it's madness because you won't even. There's nothing on the ground for him to be chewing, but he will find something to chew, and then you're trying to pull it out of his mouth before he hurts himself.
Put that in your mouth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and he just no, I don't. I've got this, you stupid bastard. And you could send Tommy Lee Jones in there, and you will not find anything. You will not find a single thing. But the second he closes his mouth, he's back chewing on it again. It's like he's got a pocket dimension in there.
Yeah, you've got to watch him. One of our dogs, Ross, ate our fence. A wooden fence.
Okay.
Yeah, and a wooden outdoor table.
This is an ambitious dog.
Yeah. Half the wallpaper off the kitchen walls.
Now, was this a dog or a dog man, Paul?
Yeah, Labrador. He was the size of a bear, but thought he was still a puppy.
Yes.
So they have voracious appetites for everything that's bad for them.
So what you're saying is I'm a black lab. You're not wrong. You're not wrong, is all I'm saying.
Sit. Good boy.
Don't get used to that. The skeleton. One night when I was 18 years old, I was laying on my back in bed, wide awake. I know I was awake because I remember thinking how tired I was and being annoyed I couldn't fall asleep. So I laid there staring at the ceiling and thinking about random things. My room isn't all that dark. I always keep a TV on in the room itself, and my bedroom door stays open so light from the living room can also get in. As I lay there staring at the ceiling, I noticed that it started to get both really cold and really dark in my room. When I finally clocked what was happening, I looked down at my feet and noticed a black mist hovering at the foot of my bed. When I saw the mist, the amount of terror that hit me is impossible to fully communicate. Immediately, something started slowly pushing the cover in around my body, starting at my feet and moving all the way up to my shoulders. When the cover got pushed in around my shoulders, I felt shoved into the mattress. It felt like I was being pushed down 2 inches into my bed, with the bed folding in around me. At this point, all I could move was my head, and I looked at the mist, which slowly started moving from the bottom of my bed over top of me until it got right to my face. When it got to my face, a skeletal black mist face with no eyes, just eye sockets, kind of like what you think the Grim Reaper would look like, started screaming into my face. It was so terrifying, I closed my eyes and tried to scream for my mom to help me. I tried 4 or 5 different times to scream for her, but this thing just kept screaming into my face and nothing I was saying was coming out. I finally turned my head to the side and started crying when it just let me go, and I immediately jumped out of bed and ran into my mom's room trembling. I couldn't tell her what I'd seen, as I figured she would think I was crazy. Now I'm 24 years old and married. Nothing like that has happened since, except I never sleep on my back again. But now, sometimes I will lay in bed, and it will feel like my bed is shaking. And sometimes, if I fall asleep on my side, something will grab my arm or arms and hold me there, and I won't be able to move. No matter how hard I fight, I cannot move. I remember even once I couldn't move, but at the same time something was pulling me slowly off the side of the bed, and I tried reaching out to my wife or screaming to wake her up, but I couldn't. Then, just before I fell off the bed, it let me go. Well, that's a horror. Although I will say, buddy, you wonder why you're having a hard time sleeping. You have the television on and the light coming in. I think that might have something to do with it.
Yes, I like my sleeping time to be akin to Dracula's coffin.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, dear Reddit, I like to sleep with Batman's signal light shining directly into my retinas. Why can't I sleep?
I have these are blackout curtains.
I also have blackout curtains. I get it.
I'm probably another year away from wearing an eye mask.
I like them, actually. I've been wearing an eye mask for a couple of years now. I got one from Nick because I was having some trouble with light, and no, they work like a damn. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll just pass out in the middle of the night. I'll wake up, or I pass out on the couch, and then when I go to the bedroom, I toss on the mask, and yeah, no, I love that shit. I remember I was chatting with a girl who worked at one of the gyms I used to go to, and she said something about like I'm never going to meet someone because she said I sleep with a mouth guard and an eye mask, and I said, well, hey, I sleep with an eye mask, so I get it. You're fine, trust me. Someone's dumb enough to get together with me, you'll be okay.
Yes, and don't dare try and take my hot water bottle.
I don't need a hot water bottle. I'm rarely cold.
I'm always Nesh.
Nesh means cozy, right?
Yeah, it means cold in Sheffield.
Oh, always cold. Oh, okay. Interesting.
Proper Nesh.
Well, you're a slender man, so that might have something to do with it. I'm well padded. I'm also fueled by rage, so that helps.
Okay.
There's this thing that happened once. Should I tell you? Yeah, I'll tell this story. It's fine. Years ago, a friend of mine was dating this woman. He would eventually go on to marry her. Her and I did not see eye to eye. She was a very particular woman. And she would do this thing where she changed sides mid-argument. So, for example, we were once having a conversation about nude beaches. And I said, that's not really something I would do, but because I'm just not comfortable with that. But I said, hey, I'm all happy for it. That's awesome. Good for you. Yeah, if someone wants to do that, I don't care. And she said, yeah, she said, it's great. But, you do get pervs who creep on people. And she told me, she shared a story, and she said, this happened to me and a friend, and we were uncomfortable coming out of the water because this guy was clearly staring at us. And I said, that sucks. It's unfortunate that people would do that. They would go to a nude beach and make people feel uncomfortable. And I don't know if she thought now was I don't know what happened, what mental calculus happened in her brain, but suddenly she was defending the guy who was creeping on her. She was saying, well, sometimes people just like to appreciate the human form. I'm like, what the fuck are we talking about?
It's like, yeah, but I am hot.
Well, that's fine. I mean, good for you, but it was bizarre. It was fucking bizarre. And I lost my mind. Because I couldn't understand why she was now disagreeing with me. I said, yes, I understand that some people just appreciate the human form, and that's a beautiful thing. But you just said the guy made you uncomfortable. So I was commiserating with that. I was sympathizing with that. Well, not everyone tries to make you uncomfortable. Nope. I didn't say that. And I lost my mind. I'm going to the bathroom. You're fucking nuts. Afterwards, she told her boyfriend, my friend, as they were driving home, only reason I can assume she thinks this is because I'm, nominally Italian, and I'm not really. I'm like 44% fucking Italian. I'm not really that Italian. But she said to him, I think Brennan has a temper because he eats too much pasta. So I'm warmed not only by my rage at the general stupidity of the world, but apparently too much pasta that turns me into the carb Hulk. So you're just not eating enough pasta, Paul. But you have to be aware, it comes with a great responsibility.
I shall bear that in mind and take steps to avoid contact.
Partway through that story, I thought, this isn't really applicable to what we're talking about, but fuck it, we're here. I'm going to finish it.
Perhaps it made you feel like a skeleton with no eyes screaming into the void.
Yeah, good point. Let's go back to the story. Before we do, though, I just got to say, I got a notification on my phone. I love that you and I are both commenting on the same Facebook article while we're recording this fucking show. This is focus in action, folks.
It's multitasking in action. It's just demonstrating our talent.
There we go. Powered by carb rage. All right. Anyways. Going back to the story, I do think there is an element of sleep paralysis in this one, because it sounds like, that's just what it seemed. It seems like they fell asleep and didn't realize they were asleep. I'm not necessarily saying it was a dream, but I do think there was an element of sleep paralysis at play there.
Mm. Yeah, it's a very specific thing as well. Most people, when they describe paranormal encounters, do not describe skeletons.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Given how prevalent it is with death imagery, Santa Muerte and stuff like that. It's not something we see often.
No, not at all.
Although, continuing the trend of talking about Bren's digestive system, I actually had a dream once about a black skeleton coming out of my body when I farted. This is what I dream about, folks. I had a really bad fart once in my dream. This is my aspirational shit. Anyways, so in the dream, this happened. It was very loud. And as it was like building, this black skeleton wearing medieval armor crawled out of my chest and screamed at the sky. And I was watching the whole thing happen from above me in the dream. And I will never, ever forget that dream. It was kind of unsettling at the time. And I was trying to explain this to my friends, because I was probably in my 20s when this happened. And there's no dream that starts with, well, I farted, that is going to get you any kind of sympathy. It stops right there. It doesn't matter how scared you were. It doesn't matter if the rest of the dream was the entire film's zone of interest. Soon, if it starts with passing gas, that is the headline for the remainder of the story.
I don't think I've ever dreamt of skeletons.
I envy you this.
Who knows? Who knows what my strange brain will concoct in these post-nicotine era.
I know. We're really just at the beginning of the Paul Bestel dream era. So I think, let's not rule it out.
Yes. Who knows? I've had weird office-based dreams recently.
Oh, really? Just like work stuff?
Yeah, but people who I've never worked in an office with. Shit dreams, really. I mean, no interest at all. Nothing exciting happening there.
I hate that when you realize, sometimes in mid-dream I've had this happen, where you realize, boy, this is a shit dream. I once had a dream where I was watching a sequel to the Lego movie, because I really quite liked the first Lego movie.
Yes, the first one was very good.
Before the next one came out, I had this dream that I was going to see Lego Movie 2, and it was such a janky piece of shit, what my mind put together. And I remember sitting in the theater thinking, boy, this is the best I can do. Because I suddenly became aware it was a dream, and I've never so disappointed in myself. This is what we come up with. Woof. Woof.
The thing on the stairs. Let me start by telling you that I've never been one to believe in ghosts. I'm 17, hard-headed, and have to have evidence for everything. I like being scared, though, so I volunteer at haunted houses that are put on for 3 weekends in October. It's such a fun place to volunteer, and I'm so glad that I got involved. Let me tell you a little bit about the building first. It was originally built in the late 1800s and burnt down 10 years to the day. It was then rebuilt sometime between 1900 and 1910. Anyway, this haunted house takes a lot of setup, prop building and the like, and we usually start building the props about a month or two ahead of time and setting up the week before. The prop building days went off without incident and nothing happened to me. Well, nothing beside a few kids trying to scare me in the creepy bathroom basement by turning off the lights. It didn't really bother me, considering I'd heard them giggling like idiots before they did it, then heard them laughing all the way back up the stairs. I simply did my business and turned the lights back on. Now, here we are, 10 days away from our opening night. We were all running around like chickens with our heads cut off, trying to make sure that everything was perfect. No detail was too small. The decorations, the lighting, even the placement of props. Everything had to be perfect. My supervisors, let's call them Jerry and Betty, asked me to run upstairs and grab a box of books. I agreed and ran upstairs, grabbing the box in question. As I was going back downstairs, though, something just didn't feel right. It felt creepy. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a black mist. I stopped still and blinked a few times, thinking it was my eyes, but it didn't go away. I decided I must be dreaming or overly tired, and started walking again. Only this time there were footsteps following me, and I was really freaked out. I whipped around and saw nothing. There was nothing there. I don't know what it was, or if I was just crazy, but I was beyond freaked out, and it happened twice more that night.
Sleep. When this happened, I wasn't more than 7 or 8. I'm now in my early 20s and still remember it vividly. At the time, I lived in a small townhome with just my older sister and my mother. We each had our own rooms on the same floor. My sister's door was next door to mine, and my mother's was no more than 10 feet down the hall. I don't remember much of the day leading up to the event, just that it happened when I was asleep. I don't even know if asleep is the right word. At that moment in time, all I knew was darkness. Darkness like I have never known before. Nothingness. As if black mist had set over me and I lost all sense of time. It was hot and I could feel myself sweating, but couldn't move, and it was difficult to breathe, as if the mist that sat over me was heavy. I was just there in the nothingness, terrified but unable to speak or move or wake up. Suddenly the door burst open. It wasn't loud enough to wake my sister, but I instantly sat up. The black mist disappeared as if sucked out of the room by something. Sweat was running down my face, and my mother stood at the doorway and stared briefly at the room. She quickly scooped me up and brought me to her room for the rest of the night. Years afterward, when I was in my later teen years, she told me that night she was dreaming when she heard someone tell her to wake up to check on me. And when she did, she said she felt the negative energy leaving when she opened the door. We have talked about it a few times over the years, but I have never experienced anything like that again. And I actually found a couple other stories online, I think primarily from Reddit, but I believe one might be from another place. But it's the same thing. Someone waking up in the night, one guy saw a black mist kind of spread over top of him and his girlfriend. And another guy was alone, and he started to feel the mist on his own chest. It reminds me of one of the first missing time stories I ever found, where this guy was walking home from school, and I guess he used to get bullied. So he started taking different routes home, so these guys couldn't find him and kick the shit out of him. And I guess one day he was walking a particular route home, and as he stepped off the curb, he saw the far curb start to recede into the distance. And then the next thing he knew, he was facing the other direction. Somewhere completely else in town. And, was somewhere completely different in town. And he had no memory of getting there. All he knew is he was walking completely the opposite direction. Like someone had just turned him around. And when he checked his watch, it was, I want to say like an hour later. And his mom was pulling up alongside him in her car. And all she said was, get in. And supposedly, according to him, his mother was, prepping dinner or whatever the fuck it is that she was doing. And suddenly she had this very strong feeling that A, he was in trouble, and B, she knew exactly where to go to find him. And she did, and he was there. So it's, really bizarre shit, but there is sort of this kind of connection, I guess. And that kind of thing is, like I say, it elevates the story because it's not just one person's experience.
It shows the power of mums. That too,
yeah. Boy, I wish my mom had been there when I saw that thing in Montreal. That got, when I woke up with it standing over my bed, because my mom's small, but she would have kicked the shit out of it.
Yes, size matters not to a mother protecting her children.
Nope, 4'10" made a pure rage. I think she's 4'10". I know, Mom, if you're looking, if it's 4'11", I don't care. That's fine. I know you're not 5 feet tall. So let's not have any pretense here.
The upper fours. Yeah,
the upper fours. She's going to kill me for saying that.
The crack in the wall. A few months ago, I was at a friend's house, and we were sitting with her mum and older cousin, who were telling us ghost stories that had happened to them or other members of the family. It's an extended family who live in a duplex. My friend, her mother and brother currently live in one house, and her two sisters and now past brother also live there. And her uncle, his wife and their adult children live in the other. My friend's other uncle lived there too until he passed of a heart attack, which occurred in the next door house, which ties into this first story. So this one night, my friend's mum and older cousin were sharing all these stories about stuff that happened to one or two family members, and two of them really stuck out to me. My friend asked her mother, who I'll call Rita, if she remembered anything happening in the house next door, which was the cousin's house. Rita began to talk about how in one of the rooms of the house, either the living room or the master bedroom, I don't totally remember, there was a crack in one of the walls by the ceiling, and occasionally there was this weird, dark, misty fog that would sometimes leak out of the crack and just linger there for a while. And whenever it happened, everyone in the house would get this weird, heavy feeling. The cousin, who I'll call Maritza, interrupted Rita because she'd forgotten about it until it was brought up again, and then they had this conversation amongst themselves about it. It was a pretty believable exchange because they'd finish each other's train of thought like people were really talking about a shared memory would, except you could tell they were both really unnerved by it. They said that as the second uncle died, the mist stopped appearing. It stuck out to me a lot because, as I mentioned before, the uncle died in the same house the mist kept appearing in, and both Rita and Maritza seemed to deeply believe that his spirit was protecting the family from whatever was causing the black mist. I'm not one to 100% believe in every ghost story I hear. It was very obvious from their tone of voice that they believed deeply in what they saw. I was friends with this girl years before the uncle died, and neither of us remember the mist, but I do remember being really uncomfortable with being in the second house. Or maybe that was down to the fact that I wasn't as close with the extended family and felt a bit weird about being in their house back then.
I wonder if this is another thing where you've got a situation where they sort of conflate two different things together. Like the idea that the uncle was somehow protecting them from the black mist, but then the black mist stopped coming after he died. You know, again, you wonder, is that it kind of drawing connections there between two unrelated things?
Yeah. Sometimes you can't help it. You'll connect two unrelated incidents together because you feel it gives you a solution, but there may be no correlation between either event, really.
I guess that's a big part of this genre. You know, like you and I like to make fun of some of the more bullshit charlatans. Like there's actually something that came up on our live stream this month that we had a chuckle about, you know, people who were exposed for doing some suspicious knocking, we'll say.
What are they trying to sell you?
Tap once for like, tap two for subscribe.
Get out of here.
But ultimately, I guess it just comes down to people wanting to make sense of this shit. You know,
yes.
And I guess to that, I mean, I'm not a big fan of people who hoax things, you know that. But at the same time, I am sympathetic to people who buy what they're selling because it's just more comforting than thinking, well, I guess I don't know what the fuck is going on. I am just surrounded by phantoms that seem to bear no resemblance to any belief structure I have, but insist on existing.
I think you can always smell a rum story, though, because usually they're just ridiculous. Whereas you would suggest that a black mist coming out of a mysterious crack in a wall seems a bit peculiar, more than anything. Because it's not doing anything, it's not harassing people or smothering their faces and trying to kill them. It's just hanging about and making everybody feel sad.
It's like me when I'm going through a depressive episode. I'm no danger to anyone, I'm just a real bummer.
We've all been there, mate. It's sometimes the banality of a story that, for me, sells it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've said this before, but when I was working on Strange, way back, I would always, there was a handful of stories I thought, I'm not using this because this just sounds like someone watched too many episodes of, Freddy's Nightmares or something. It just, one was like, she said a ghost broke a coffee pot across her boyfriend's head, and I thought, I don't think he did. I don't think that's the case at all, in fact.
I said no sugar!
No more wire coat hangers. And actually, funny enough, I've been writing all these ghost stories for that other project I'm working on, which we're not talking about just yet. But, I've written 30 some ghost stories at this point. And it's not strictly speaking like a true ghost story show, where there's we're not, I guess I gave away it's a show. Anyways, but yeah, strictly, it's not a true story show. Like ostensibly, it's just a ghost show. It's a spooky show. But I'm trying to make them sound like as real as possible. And I've had to do that. I've had to kind of recognize that, after 7 years of doing this show, I have to remember that a lot of these things don't have endings. There's no neat way to tie it all up. Some of them, sure, they do, but a lot of them, they don't. And I think that's what makes them really hard to get your head around sometimes, is they don't have, and again, that's why people start, cooking shit up, is because we love to have narrative closure. and that's why I say, so I think sometimes we get a little fast and loose with the truth because we want to draw these things together.
No, sometimes they just stop.
That's it.
And
yeah.
I think that's as infuriating for people as anything else, because there's no reason why it starts and there's no reason why it stops. It's just done.
That reminds me of something from the episode you did with Rob Gandy, where you guys were, it was just a brief thing, but you were talking about meeting someone who you are certain you know, but there's no way for you to have met.
No.
And that happened to you in London, did you say?
Yes. Yes, it did.
Would you mind telling the story real quick?
Yeah, so I go to London regularly, not as much as I used to. I used to go down once a month because at the turn of the century, a lot of my really good friends had all decamped to the big smoke, and so I used to go, once a month, once every 6 weeks, have a long weekend, great fun, and so often Saturdays would be made up of having a genteel all-dayer, shall we say, where we'd meet early on and drink some mucky beer and watch some football and maybe wander off for some food in the early evening and then carry on till we were too tired to carry on. And on this one particular day, one of my friends, John, who's now a football journalist of some repute here in the UK, top lad, works for The Guardian a lot, he turned up with one of his friends, and we were both struck almost instantly by the fact that we both knew each other. We didn't know how we knew each other. We couldn't place how we met. We couldn't tell anything super specific about each other. But it was clear that we both had the sensation of meeting before and getting on. But we never had. And it's a sensation. I've met people in passing and then met them several years later, and it's taken me a while to remember who they are, and vice versa. But I've never had anything like that, where both me and this other chap, ironically whose name was Stig, were both struck by the fact that we'd clearly met, we knew each other, but we couldn't explain how at all. It was so weird.
Yeah. And it really sort of resonated with me because I've had that experience in my life, and neither time, and the reason I bring this up, neither time were we ever able to connect it to anything. So it's just this dangling thread. It's like a sore tooth. You keep poking at it from time to time, but you can't resolve it. And it would be so much easier to be able to say, and I think this is what people do, well, we must have met in a past life or something. And who knows, maybe that's the case. But it is
at the Palace of Versailles.
There you go. But it is enormously frustrating to not be able to connect those dots. And so I think that is a lot of what ends up happening, is kind of people end up telling themselves stories.
Yeah. I just couldn't. And I still can't. It's like, I don't know, 22 years since. We liked the same bands, we liked the same, we had the same interests. It was strikingly strange. That's why it stuck with me for so long, because it was so singularly unique in strange experiences.
I remember the most dramatic time for me was, funny enough, when I actually listened to the Rob Gandy episode and had this thought, I realized the connection, which I had not cottoned onto before. But back in 2014, I was working for Cortex, a consulting company I worked with prior to becoming a podcaster. And they sent me to a workshop up in the town of, Ladysmith. And that's about an hour and a half north of Victoria. So they sent me there for a workshop. It was a social media workshop because they wanted to see if there was any value in them getting into that arena. And so they thought, well, we'll send the schmuck who has to go where we send him. And, his time is worth wasting, having a day in a hotel conference room. But at the time, I was not really, I was on Twitter, but I wasn't an Instagram guy. I just didn't have any interest in Instagram. And I went to this thing, and that was kind of the primary focus. TikTok didn't exist yet. Vine, I think Vine existed, but
Vine.
I know, right?
I used to like Vine.
No, you could just watch TikTok. It's basically just Vine.
Yeah, but it goes on longer than 7 seconds, doesn't it?
You just got to fight. Just got the algorithm enfold you in its warm embrace. It'll find you videos of 7 seconds or less.
I'm not going to spend that much time.
That's fair. But anyway, so we did this workshop, but there was this guy sitting across from me, and he's big guy, big hockey player looking guy. And he kept looking at me, and I kept looking at him. And finally, during the first break, I went over and said, hey, man, this is going to sound weird, but he said, you know me from somewhere. I said, yeah. And he's like, yeah, man, I know you too. I don't know from where. And we were trying to run through our heads where we would have run into each other. And I mean, he was actually a hockey player and he had played in Revelstoke, but I have zero crossover with the hockey scene in Revelstoke, especially when I was a kid. So we have no idea. But what I think is interesting is that got me on Instagram, which is ultimately how I met Peter from Padzanta Music, which is how we got the theme song to the show. And without that connection, the show would not have been what it was. And I'm not saying it happened for that reason, but I think the connection, which is what I realized when listening to your episode with Rob Gandy, that really was like, oh shit, yeah, that's when I met this guy, was at this really pivotal junction. Because again, that is where, say, the Ghost Story guys came, the fact that, like our Instagram account now, which is sadly the most successful part of the show, that all comes from that day in that conference room in a hotel, and I think it was Ladysmith. But this dude and I, we never figured it out, and I've never seen him again. And like I said, it's just this stupid, annoying, dangling thread in my life that I cannot resolve.
It can't be that unique an experience, surely. I would imagine some of the listeners have had something similar occur to them where they've met somebody that both parties feel that they know each other, but there's absolutely no previous encounter. Can't just be me and you.
No, I would assume so. And folks, if you have an experience like this, send it to us. ghoststoryguys@gmail.com. We would love to hear your experiences of this. So just before we go, there's a story. I probably told you this before. I've told all my stories on the show. I've been doing it for 7 years. I haven't had a very interesting life. I've only got so many stories to tell. However, a friend of mine called me a couple years ago now. Well, probably more than a couple. Maybe it might have been 5-6 years ago. But he said, Bren, the weirdest thing just happened. And he's a business owner, and he was outside having a smoke. And there's a cafe next door. And there was a woman sitting out front of the cafe. And he looked at her, and she looked at him. And he thought, Jesus, I feel like I know her from somewhere. And then he looked back over, and she was looking at him again. And he thought, what? That's weird. And finally, she came up to him. She finished whatever it was she was eating. She came up to him and said, you think you know me from somewhere, right? And he said, yeah. She said, oh, yeah. She said, we were married in a past life. Not for long, but we were married. She said, you went off to war. And I want to say it was like the Prussian something. It was like a very old conflict. But she said, you were a scout. You went off to war. You never came back. So we were only married for a very, very brief time. But that's why you think you know me, because in another life, you knew me. And she just walked the fuck away, got in her car, and that was it. Mic drop.
What?
And I mean, if it was a prank, it was a fucking genius prank. Because again, my friend was immediately, and he's not really given to these kinds of conversations. He was just on the phone to me going, well, this just happened. But interestingly enough, he's a war guy. He's fascinated by the history of war. He's one of those guys who knows everything about certain battles, and not just a World War II guy, but like a, sort of pre-20th century conflict. He knows a lot about this shit, just fascinated by it. So perhaps it is because in another life he was a soldier. Or that lady's just really great at coming up with gags on her feet, which, hey, my hat's off to you.
Not many people would revert to Prussia as a scene of conflict, though.
I think it was Prussia. I want to say that was, I might be misremembering, but
most conflicts in Europe in the 19th century involved Prussia in one way or another.
Oh, there we go.
They were always scrapping.
Well, there we go. If it was a prank, she had a solid grasp of history, which I think we all have to appreciate.
Yes. If it wasn't us, it was the Prussians.
That's a T-shirt right there.
Well, it doesn't exist anymore, so they can't sue us.
Put the Union Jack on that bad boy. We got something here, Paul.
Yeah, that's the story of Britain's history over the last 300 years.
If it wasn't us, it was the Prussians.
No, just put a Union Jack on it.
Pulse. So one night, must have been around 9:30, not exactly sure what time of year, but it was getting dark and not overly cold, so I'm guessing around April or May. I was walking home from the supermarket. Normally, walking home from that shop, I would cut through an estate rather than walk the main roads. The shortcut was quieter, and I've always appreciated quiet, which could be a rare thing in my parents' house. So, at the end of the road, after getting onto the estate, there are some bollards and a footpath to another street a few meters away. I walked through and turned onto the street when I saw something in the middle of the road. Now, It all happened pretty quick, but within those few seconds, what I saw had disappeared behind a car. It looked like a ball of dense black mist that was pulsating or something. It was about 20 meters away when I saw it, so judging by the distance, I would say it was the size of a large dog. After the car passed, I couldn't see the black ball on the ground, and it didn't appear to have any legs, so I had no idea where it could have gone. I kept walking, thinking, what the hell was that? I got to where it had been and had a look around to see if I could find it, but no, not a thing. I walked home pretty quickly after that. And so that's a really short story, obviously, but the reason I included it is because it actually lines up with two other things I found, one of which was originally intended to be an astral spider episode, which I just couldn't find enough stories that I thought were credible. But basically in that story, some people were hanging out in their house, and the wife started freaking out because she's afraid of spiders, and she saw hanging in front of them what she thought was a little spider. So she went to told her husband, do something about this. And he got up, but when he got up, he realized that it wasn't a spider. It was like a teardrop-shaped black dot. And he got kind of close to it, and she said, what are you doing? He said, no, this is not a spider. He like ran his hands all around it. He said, like, there's nothing, it's not hanging from anything. And he started to go grab it, and his wife lost her shit because she realized, yeah, this is not a spider. But he said as his hand got closer to it, he really saw the surface of this thing, and it was just sort of rippling. And I guess it eventually just started moving of its own accord and passed through a nearby wall. And then there was another story I found. A woman and her husband used to go out to McDonald's for $1 fountain drinks.
The hell is that?
Fountain drinks, like a soda machine, You
mean like a refill thing where you just go and fill your own cup?
Yeah. That's a soda.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, those are called, over here they're called fountain drinks. They used to be $1. They are not $1 anymore. But anyways, so they went to go get these dollar drinks, and then they would sit in the car and shoot the breeze and drink their drinks. And so I guess this was about 3 a.m. when this happened. And they were driving home, and when they did, they saw a little dog crossing the road chasing something. And what it was chasing was this black cloud that looked like it was made of some kind of thick, oily substance. Not like mist, but again, it was kind of like we've discussed before. It just weird, kind of like this oily fog, but they said it moved, it flowed, but had sort of a glitchy, unnatural quality. It didn't quite flow. And apparently that also gave this person a really bad feeling, similar to the one we talked about in Crack in the Wall.
There's that strange kind of, when people, when they're not mist, they seem to be like liquid, like this oily, wet impression that you get from seeing them, as though they're sort of like a bubble, like a big black oily bubble, moving and pulsating and throbbing.
Emma can get away with reading Bigfoot erotica. I don't think we can get away with anything like that.
I thought it was more akin to H.G. Wells describing the aliens in War of the Worlds myself, but I'm sorry for using classic literature there.
Prior to us talking about, I think the Chicago episode was the first time this came up, but prior to it coming up, did you have much experience with this kind of phenomena?
I've heard sporadic stories about black mists and strange, oily sort of, I don't know, objects that people have encountered, but not many. They're quite rare. They're not something that gets reported a lot. There are a couple from here in the UK that I can't place off the top of my head, but I've certainly read them in classic ghost literature of people encountering sort of oily black balls that seem to be moving of their own volition, that disappear through walls or just disperse as if they were never there in the first place. So
this would predate the 90s,
yeah.
You would say, these stories you're talking about?
Definitely.
Oh, okay. Because I was wondering, as you were describing, before I start ribbing you about the pulsating thing, your description, I was reminded of the black ooze from X-Files.
Yes.
And so I wasn't sure if this was something that started in the 90s, because you know how sometimes pop culture will bleed into these kinds of things, and people will start saying, oh, I saw something that really they actually saw in Fringe. But if it existed before that, then it makes me wonder if that is something they wove into the lore of the X-Files, as opposed to the other way around. It got me thinking, we sort of have this, people have this very staid idea of what the paranormal is.
Yes.
You know, and this stuff like this, that I would say that sometimes we don't necessarily think of these things as evolving or changing. You know, we sort of, again, the paranormal is little boys in Victorian clothes running down the hallway, you know, lovesick women in white dresses chucking themselves off balconies, and so on and so forth. But this stuff does crop up, these weird things, but somehow they don't kind of penetrate into the mainstream of what people consider to be paranormal. And I wonder why that is. I wonder if it's that thing where it's just too weird to kind of get people interested. I don't know.
There are always parts of that. I mean, one of the strangest UFO stories I ever heard was a man who was attacked by two great big bouncing balls that tried to suck him inside them and steal him in Sweden.
No shit.
Yeah, in the 50s. I think it was 50s or 60s, and he had to hang on to the fence when they were trying to like pull him back to their shit, like these pulsating balls.
The 50s were a really bizarre time for these UFO stories.
No shit.
Because I mean, isn't Villas Boas 50s?
It's either late 40s or 50s. Yeah, Andre Villas Boas.
That's it. Yeah, because he was the one who was scratched to shit by a couple things, right?
And he was sexually assaulted by a beautiful alien.
Oh, okay, no, I'm thinking of someone else. Because there was a story, I want to say it was from Argentina or something like that, where this guy saw two things working on something.
Yes.
And he approached them and they attacked him and basically scratched him all hell and gone.
Yeah,
I think that was the 50s.
Yeah. There was loads of weird things. The sighting over the football ground in Italy when it rained angel hair. That was the 50s.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, there was a football match. And I mean, there was thousands of people saw this thing fly over the football stadium. This was not one or two people. It stopped the game. This enormous thing flying across it. It has been explained as ballooning spiders, if you know what a ballooning spider is.
Yes, I'm sad to say I do.
Which is an absolute nonsense, because it completely disregards the experience of every single person that saw that thing. They all saw a craft in the sky that rained some kind of fragile white residue, which is what became known as angel hair, which is quite a rare phenomenon, but is reported in some UFO cases, like some kind of residue, as though it's passing through the atmosphere and causing some kind of plasma reaction where it changes the chemical compound of the air around it, some reason, whatever it could be. Seems more feasible than a bunch of ballooning spiders.
I feel like after a while you'd notice.
There is an explanation that disregards every witness, which is stupid, you know? That's as stupid as claiming you've got a dog man living in your shed that you have to give a steak to every Sunday. And I'm sure there's somebody out there who tells similar story, you know, or that guy who lives in Canada who claims to shout out of his window to his Bigfoot mate in the local woods when it's clearly a person shouting. As I said with W.T. Watson, you know, we often give skeptics a hard time for some of these stupid explanations that just because it's a factually based phenomenon doesn't mean you can apply it to something when it disregards every other person. You're basically saying you're all wrong and what you described is wrong and I'm telling you this is what happened. When it ignores the facts, and you can't give an explanation for something or give a belief for something. Like when people claim that I've gone to this house and I've made this ghost pass over. How do we know that? You can't prove that. You can tell us that, but there's no evidence for it. Or when a psychic says, oh, well, I know somebody died in this house in da-da-da, and now we can check the records and there's no death. So you can't, you know, or like we've got going on here at the minute, there's a show on British television, Channel 5, it's The Pet Psychic.
Oh, no.
And last week's episode featured a woman with a pet ferret, and the pet psychic came round to see them because she was worried about a ferret, and so she was able to communicate with the ferret and say that she was lonely and she wanted a friend. But this ferret had its own bedroom, so there was a lot to unpack in that particular segment of the show.
Oh, boy. Doesn't your ferret have its own bedroom, man? Come on. Don't be weird.
Hey, don't fuck about with ferrets. They can bite you.
I believe it. Yep, no,
Teeth like razor blades.
Again, if there's anyone I know who's likely to have been bitten by a ferret, it's Paul Damien Bestel.
I've never been bitten by a ferret. I got bitten by a rat once and it died 3 days later. My friend had a pet rat and it bit me, and then 3 days later it was dead.
This is peak Paul Bestel right here. We don't need Chuck Norris jokes anymore.
Dream love. I'm quite superstitious, but would always try to find a logical reasoning before going towards a paranormal explanation. This happened a couple of years ago when I was travelling in France. I checked in at a hotel in Nice and shared a room with my mum. The room has 2 twin beds, so we each slept in 1 bed each. We had a long day, so my mum passed out on her bed as soon as we walked in the room. I stayed up a little to upload some pictures onto Facebook, which took longer than expected because of the crappy French internet. I was sitting on the edge of the bed with my laptop next to me, and about an hour in, I started to feel some pressure behind my back and around my abdominal area, like I was being hugged from behind. I chalked it up to being tired, so I turned off my laptop and went to bed. I had a dream that I was standing in front of the hotel feeling confused. It was daytime and a guy approached me and asked if I was from around the area. I told him I was a tourist, so he offered to take me around. The next thing I knew, I was visiting all these beautiful places with him. We ate, shopped, visited a bunch of monuments, and I had a really nice time in my dream. We hung out until the sun started setting, and I remembered holding hands with him, laughing and walking towards the sunset. But for some reason I stopped walking and wondered, who is this guy? I don't even know him. Where am I going? The moment I started to question myself, everything just stopped, like a film on pause, and then I abruptly woke up. The first thing I saw was my mum sleeping back, and it was faced towards me, but I saw a cloud of black mist floating in front of my eyes, and the reason I could tell it was a shape was because it stood out against my mum's white blouse. I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me as they were still adjusting to the light in the room. So I turned my body and looked up at the ceiling. And when I turned back, I stopped seeing the black mist. As a side note, I grew up in a Buddhist household, so my parents are super religious. They also followed a lot of superstitions. My dad was not able to travel with us, so he gave me a necklace with a Buddha's head and told me to wear it at all times. It was a talisman, and it would protect me and keep me safe, so I wore it on me all the time, except when I took a shower. Naturally, my hand started to trace up my chest, hoping to feel some comfort by holding the talisman that my dad had given me. I felt around a bit and sat up right away, because my talisman was gone. I looked over, and it was on the nightstand. I placed it back around my neck and went back to sleep. The next day, whilst having breakfast, I asked my mum if she'd taken off my talisman. She said she was so tired she slept through the entire night, so there was no way she would have even removed my necklace from my neck. I told her about my dream, and she recalled stories of people who never wake up after they sleep, because they got taken away by the spirits in their dreams. Good thing you stopped following that guy, she said, or else who knows if you were even going to wake up today. She was joking, but I felt goosebumps all over my body.
I don't know, it sounds like a pretty good deal. Good-looking gentleman showing me around town, buying me stuff. Hey, what the hell? Calgon, take me away.
Yes. Lost in the south of France, in beautiful Nice.
I can think of worse places to get lost, I'll tell you that much.
Yes, Saint-Étienne. I got a train from England to Saint-Étienne and came straight back. It was a spur-of-the-moment decision that I regretted as soon as the game was over. As the streets erupted into a riot, I thought, Paul, you are a dickhead at times.
I love how I feel like that's the only way that I took an unexpected trip to France could go badly.
I used to do it quite a lot for football. What's the worst that could happen? Riots!
So there were actual riots?
Oh, yeah. No, it was like a war zone after the match. Yeah, it was horrific.
Was this a normal occurrence, or was this a particular circumstance?
It was England versus Argentina in the World Cup in 1998.
Oh, so the English caused a riot?
The Argentinians, and then the French turned up as well.
Oh, okay. Everyone had a hand in this.
Oh, it was a free-for-all. It usually does at World Cup. Certain teams. It's not the worst thing I've seen at World Cup. I was at Poland versus Germany in 2006, and that was essentially like blitzkrieg. They were firing fireworks at each other.
Jesus Christ.
Sound I'll never forget.
You know, we have one riot here after a Canucks game, and they talk about it for 100 years. They'll be inscribing it into stone tablets to preserve it for future generations. This is just Tuesday for you guys.
Yeah, I've seen riots in 7 European countries due to football. It's a beautiful thing. It's a pan-European language we all speak.
So you have personally been present at 7 riots?
Oh, at least, yeah. 7 different countries.
Jesus.
Yeah. Holland, Germany, France, Spain. That was started by the police. England. I also have seen some trouble at football. Italy. Yeah.
Riots, a bunch of girlfriends who live in other countries. I'm starting to think there's more going on with this best. A dead rat. Yeah. I'm not saying anything else in case I die in the next 3 days. You crawl out of my television. Bad timing. Shortly after my wife and I got married, we lived in a 2-bedroom apartment on the lower of 2 levels. The door to the apartment next to ours was across the hall, and the sliding glass door faced the parking area. At the time, we didn't have a bed that was large enough for the both of us, so every night we would lay the futon mattress on the living room floor, and that's how we would sleep. Ah, the simple life. One night, I do not recall the exact time, maybe around 10 to 11ish, my wife and I were having relations on said futon mattress. In an instant, the next thing I knew, a black, swirling mist came from the neighbor's apartment, across the hallway, and through our wall. I'm not sure exactly how I knew where it came from, and I don't believe I turned my head to look at it. I might have somehow felt it without turning my head to see it. Does that make any sense? As it came through the wall to my left, it circled around to my back and then went into my spine area. This happened so quickly there was no time to react. I say this because I did not stop continuing with relations. As it entered me, I can only describe it as having entered an outer area or shell, not my inner being, so to speak. The thing is that once it was in there, I noticed my mood becoming aggressive. Not possession, puking, vomit, crazy aggressive. It was just a slight change in mood. This lasted for only a second or two, and my wife made a terrible face, screamed, and threw me off of her. As this happened, I felt/saw the mist exit out of my back, heading across the living room, through the wall, and continue on its way. As I jumped up, I immediately blurted out, "It's okay, it's gone." After this, she told me that my entire facial structure changed, and my head elongated vertically. She said that's what made her freak out. I then told her my part of the story and what I saw. I got the feeling/impression that this being was sort of fleeing or moving along, but not afraid, and at the same time goofing off as it went. Kind of like a few drunken kids moving down an alley, knocking over garbage cans and laughing as they go. Although this thing was moving at an incredible speed. What I would like to know is, what manner of being is this that can change facial structure and form so quickly? So, I'm just going to tell you, I don't really believe this one, but it's funny because the idea of getting haunted while you're boning down that's pretty great.
It's a very niche part of the paranormal, I have to say.
I'll be honest. Once upon a time, you'll probably remember this, back in the old days, there was intended to be a ghost sex episode. Now, in the episode, it's called The Ghost with Two Backs. It's like 2018. If you go back there, it sounds like we actually tried to record it. There's a bunch of bleeps and cuts and stuff like that. We never did. I constructed it like that intentionally as a joke. Like we made it to make it sound like we tried reading it. Because there are actually a surprising number of ghost sex stories out there, but reading them out loud is so cringe. That's why genuinely I think what Emma does, because apparently she reads out some spooky erotica stuff over on Real Life Ghost Stories. And I think it's great that she can pull that off, because I lack the capacity to pull that off. Apparently it's a lot of fun when she does it. To me, I think I would sound like a subway pervert breathing on you at rush hour. Just, that's how I feel it would sound if I said any of these things. No one in this world wants to hear that in my voice. Well, okay, I won't say no one, but not on the show. So yeah, there's a surprising number of stories out there from people who claim to either have had sex with a ghost or near a ghost,
marry a ghost.
Marry a ghost, yep, there's that too.
Divorce a ghost. He's cheated on her.
Like I said, this one was more of this was a fun one. But I will say, I mean, if such a thing were to happen, I feel like the base of the spine is an interesting spot to pick. I feel like isn't there meant to be some kind of chakra at the base of your spine?
I believe so, but it's not a strong point of my knowledge.
No, me either. So I think it was honestly the thing that really kind of made me think, I'm not buying this, was the face change thing. That to me, that's horror movie stuff. You know, if there was anything, like, it would be a perception of facial change. I do not think there's any variation of the universe where the stuff we talk about can actually change the entire structure of your face.
Yes, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yeah, exactly. Which we will be talking about on the next Talk Spooky episode, because we got a screener for the new Dr. Jekyll movie.
Yes.
That's right. We're not getting paid to review movies, but getting them for free levels of famous now.
We do it every week anyway.
Yeah, we really do. Yeah. That reminds me, Tuesday night, I went to go see a movie. And because of the strike, they delayed so many things. So there's not a ton of stuff in theaters right now. There's not a lot of new stuff coming out. So consequently, I've seen most of the things in theaters. But Tuesday came, I was bored. Tuesday's my day off. Tuesday and Wednesday usually my days off, or as much of days off as I take. And I thought, I want to go see a movie. So there was one movie playing at Landmark I hadn't seen. I hadn't heard of the name before. It's called Article 370. But the cover, it was an Indian film, and the cover was a woman holding a gun, and I thought, well, that's good enough for me. So, but I noticed when I went to go book my ticket that almost all the seats were taken. And I thought, that can't be right. Because, I mean, movies are busy here, but not like that. And this has been out for a little while, I think. But I bought my ticket. I got one of the last seats remaining, went there. And no, it was packed. Just a completely full house. It was actually, it's a really good movie. It's a political thriller about the constitutional amendment that allowed Kashmir to be a separate state. I guess the Indian government abrogated that. I don't know. Again, I don't know modern Indian history. I know fuck all about modern Indian politics. That's kind of what makes this funny. So, like I said, it's just a political thriller, apparently loosely based on real life events. But the audience very clearly know their Indian politics, because at one point they're dramatizing scenes that involve actual government figures. And, they've done that thing they do where you make up an actor to look like that figure. Again, I don't know who this person they're referencing is, but the audience, this guy appears on the screen and it says, Cabinet Minister so-and-so, and they just cheer. Woo! like he's a WWE superstar. Like, cool. Yep. I also am on board with, actually, I don't know if I am, knowing the politics of some of these movies, but I'm not going to say anything. And then when they tally the votes in the Indian legislature, or whatever it's called, the Constituent Assembly, to whether or not they're going to pass this bill, which will abrogate Article 370. Again, it was pretty tense. Like, I know jack shit about Indian politics, but as a thriller, this was well constructed. And when it passed, again, the theater just lost their fucking minds. Yeah. And I just thought, boy, I am out of my depth. I have no idea what's going on here. Again, everyone seems happy, so I'm glad for them. But I'm just gonna sit here and enjoy my popcorn. And then afterwards, I was like Googling, like, is Article 370? Oh, it was a real. Okay, that's a real. No idea. I'm not used to my movies having requiring study guides first. So Article 370, folks, check it out. That is not a shit movie. That is not one of the shit movies I've seen recently.
Bide the time till Ghostbusters comes out.
Yeah, not long now. Less than a month.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to that. There's some kind of, I got an email from Landmark talking about some kind of deal. It's like the Bustin' Twosome deal. Not a great name. Whatever it was not a great name. But I'm like, oh, it's a Ghostbusters deal for the new movie. Well, I'm going to go see it. So, oh, if you go with someone else, you get a deal on. I'm like, well, what about for lonely, sad bastards like me? There should be a sad motherfucker discount, right? Or something. Just extra napkins to cry into, if nothing else. All right, folks. Well, that has been our episode on the mystery of the Black Mist. If you've had your own Black Mist experience, or really any kind of paranormal experience in general, shoot us an email, ghoststoryguys@gmail.com. we are preparing another Listener Stories episode. We have, as we mentioned, we have one more episode with the stories of Ruth Roper Wilde, although we may go back to that well at some point in the future. There's one more planned episode, and then after that will be a Listener Stories episode. So now is the time to send in your stories, and we will do our best to get them on the air. We're going to take a quick break and be right back. Hey there, listeners. Before you reach for that skip 15 seconds ahead button, I promise you this isn't an ad. We wanted to take a minute to talk to you about mental health. On this show, I've always tried to be as honest and open as possible about my struggles with depression and anxiety, because even though we've come a long way towards acknowledging the very real damage these things can do, there is still way too much lingering stigma about reaching out for help. And when you start to feel like there's no help, it's easy to start feeling like there's no hope. But Paul has joined me today to remind you there is always hope and there's always help.
We're not going to try and talk you out of self-harming right now, because we know that's not how it works. Instead, what we wanted to do was tell you something now and hope that should things get bad, you'll remember it and make a phone call or send a text message before you make any permanent decisions. As someone who knows all too well just how important mental health can be, it's never too late to reach out.
In Canada, the number to call is 133-456-4566. In the USA, the new number to call is 988. That's 988.
In the UK, the number to call is 116123, or text SHOUT, that's SHOUT, to 85258. In Australia, the number to call is 131114.
However bad shit seems, it will pass. And no matter what your brain might be telling you at any given moment, and believe me when I say I know this intimately, there are people who love you, and people who care deeply about how you treat yourself. Should a time come when you find yourself despairing, please know that we've both been where you are, and there is a way back to the world. Take care. Welcome back. The Ghost Story Guys are Luke Greensmith, who helps us find our stories, and is also the host of the Luke Lore podcast, available on podcast platforms everywhere. Tanya Downing, who assists with our editing and also helps manage our Facebook community. Tanya is co-host of the Streaming Into Madness podcast, also available on streaming platforms everywhere. Adam Lynch edits our video. He is host of Weekly Creep with Dulce. Joseph Camo manages our YouTube account. He is also the host of the Sociology Professor YouTube channel, which you'll find a link to in the show notes. Sarah Kent, who manages our Reddit community.
Our paranormal conductor is Mr. Brennan Storr.
And of course, my friend and co-host is the one, the only, the inimitable Paul Bestel, the paranormal Johnny Carson himself, host of Mysteries and Monsters. Paul, what's coming up on M&M?
I have an interesting episode with W.T. Watson hitting the airwaves as we dive into the forest poltergeist phenomenon, where we unpick some of the secondary phenomena associated with Bigfoot and postulate perhaps it's something else that's going along at the same time. Because I know Travis has had some fingers pointed saying that he's trying to dismiss Bigfoot as a supernatural being, where if you read his book and you listen to him, what he's saying is that there's more than one thing going on, which I think is quite clear in some cases, without involving dimensions or spaceships.
Damn it. Okay, well, agree to disagree. And where can everyone find you online?
You can find Mysteries and Monsters across all podcast platforms and social media networks.
Fantastic. I am Largely the Truth on Instagram, Letterboxd, Blue Sky, and Threads. Yes, that is right. I'm not really on Twitter anymore. And you can find my other show, Weird Together, everywhere fine podcasts live, and that is a look at independent horror movies through a sociological lens. Hosted, of course, with Joseph Camo. We've been on hiatus for a while, but we'll be coming back. Actually, by the time this comes out, we will be getting ready to record our first episode for Season 2. So very much looking forward to that. Weird Together kind of acts as my release valve for some of the shit that gets me in trouble on this show. You know, I can kind of talk about broader issues that don't really have a place in the Ghost Story Guys, but get me all head up anyways. So now that I've got that coming back, I will be able to flush out a lot of my rantier social stuff that doesn't really need to be here. All right, as we said at the top of the show, this show lives and dies by virtue of our patrons and Apple Podcast subscribers. And if you would like to join that community, where you get not only ad-free episodes, you get bonus conversations with every main episode running anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour and a half in length sometimes. The most recent one, Paul and I recorded earlier today. We talk about the Zodiac killings because of a guest Paul had on his show. We talk about all kinds of cool stuff. There's even some stories that are not necessarily appropriate for the main show, but they find a home in the bonus conversations. You also get episodes of host adventures, as well as live streams and all kinds of other cool stuff. For more details, head to patreon.com/ghoststoryguys or sign up to GSG Premium via Apple Podcasts. And don't forget, like we said at the beginning of the show, if you sign up to GSG Premium via Apple Podcasts, we would love to shout you out at the beginning of the show. Forward your confirmation to us, ghoststoryguys@gmail.com, and we will make sure to thank you on the next episode. Also, if you're a patron at the $20 level and above, you, my friend, are part of an elite club. A wonderful club. A special club. The club we like to call Ghost Force. That's right. Patrons at the $20 level and above are members of Ghost Force, our secret society. Okay, well, it's not very secret because we say your names on every second episode. It is the only secret society you can buy your way into aside from Skull and Bones. And at least this club, we can proudly say George W. Bush was never a member.
You never know.
Are you out there, W? You have to tell us.
Talk to us.
No, don't talk to us. Just keep paying. Just keep paying. We don't want to know. So when we find out Jeffrey Dahmer is also a member.
Well, that would be impressive.
I had to think of a serial killer off the top of my head, Paul.
You picked one who's dead.
Soon as it was out of my mouth, I thought, shit, he's dead.
He shares contributions with Jack the Ripper.
Anyways, this is going way off the rails.
Pull it back.
My pullout game is strong. This time around, the members of Ghost Force. Oh, I think I killed Paul.
I'm okay.
There we go. He's been sick. I gotta be gentle with him. This time around, the members of Ghost Force are
Ethan Saragon.
Shit, I closed my window. One sec.
He's new.
Big Titty Kitty.
Bren wears a pink tutu.
Cackling Skull.
Carrie Lambertus.
Cheesy Thoughts.
Cheryl Baker.
Crazy Mom.
CT.
Anthony Michaud.
Flowy Two Hats.
Generic Bob.
Hannah Brown.
Hannah Siemens.
Hilary Desassour.
Jade Moose.
Jason R. Slaughter.
Slaughter. Jennifer Mullen.
Joseph Como.
Caitlin Park.
Kimberly Hansen.
Malevolent Clamato.
Mara Noriega.
Mark Simler.
Merlin Hansen.
Michael Carney.
Nicola.
Peter Gunn 08.5.
Rebecca Brink.
Rockin' Ronnie Shenanigans.
Samantha Ellis.
Shannon Steyer.
Stefan Schwarzwart.
Close enough. Trent Cannon. You are the few. You are the spooky. You are Ghost Force. For real, those guys. Thank you so much. We couldn't do this without our patrons and Apple Podcast subscribers, but we really could not do this without Ghost Force. Your contributions are a huge part of what keep this big old machine moving. So thank you. And if you want to have your name read out in that Rolling Nightmare, which I love every time, because I never know, is it just going to be a normal readout of names or is something going to go way off the rails? I just love it. Again, you can sign up at patreon.com/ghoststoryguys. If you want to pick up some Ghost Story Guys merch, head to our website at ghoststoryguys.com. You'll find all kinds of cool stuff there. T-shirts, mugs, more T-shirts, stickers, all kinds of cool shit. And everything you buy, you'll get a personalized thank you video from me and Paul. So again, you can head to ghoststoryguys.com for all your merchandising needs. As always, shout out to our composer, Rainy Days for Ghosts. Rainy Days for Ghosts is a project of film journalist and musician Harper Smith. You can find more of Harper's work at rainydaysforghosts.bandcamp.com or by searching for Rainy Days for Ghosts and Street Witch on streaming platforms everywhere. Those are streaming courtesy of Night Harvest Recordings, which is the Ghost Story Guys house label. Find more about what we're doing over there at nightharvestrecordings.com. Our theme song, Radio, Into the Darkness We Go, is composed and performed by Peter Kursov of Podzanta Music. Find more from him by searching for Podzanta Music wherever you get your tunes. And I guess that's going to do it.
We'll be back next week, but until then,
into the darkness we go. Not saying it's happened, but I'm also not saying it hasn't happened.
We've all been there, mate.
Oh, that's not awesome.
Scanners.
Apparently. Scanner. Do you ever see the Scanner Cop movies?
I think I may have seen them in a marijuana haze a long time ago.
If you see them sometime on TV, watch them. They're a lot of fun. They're like unofficial side sequels to the Scanner movies.
Right, okay.
That's not better. He's a meat.
It works with meat.
That's worse. That's worse.
Have you not seen The Princess Bride?
Not in a long time.
Love. True love.
True love, I know. That part I know.
And then so I said, love, dream love.
Took me a minute. I'm not a massive fan of Princess Bride. Like, I like it. It's fine. I've seen it once, but it's not, it wasn't one of those movies that came out when I was young enough to kind of imprint on me.
Gives me the feels.
It does, eh?
Gets me. Really gets me. It's one of those films I'm watching it and Julie will say, are you crying? Oh, good. Of course I'm fucking crying. It's a beautiful film.
I had that happen with, I went to go see Amelie last week. It was playing at the Apollo over in Kitchener. So I drove over to see it because I guess it's like a new 4K restoration. And because it's the same way. That movie gets me. And oh, Jesus. It was a mess. Good Lord. As soon as the movie was over, I had to get the fuck out of there.
Yeah, people say I'm not romantic, but I am a big softie. Things like, I like a fantasy romantic film. Like A Matter of Life and Death, or Princess Bride, or The Crow. Crow's a very romantic film.
I have not seen it in a long. I guess it makes sense, because it starts with love.
What's more romantic than coming back from the grave to avenge the woman you love's death?
No argument here.
By wreaking bloody hell on the people that caused your death.
And now you get to see it again with the remake.
It can't be worse than any of the sequels.
Challenge accepted. Now I don't want to have to do the rest of the show. I feel like, no, it's over now. We can...
Nappy time.
Shoo. Please, God, tell me I was recording this. Yes, okay. I'm not doing that.